like I'm going to have to hold this the whole time. All right, so let's wait for people to join. I'm going to go ahead and share this into the group. It's been kind of crazy today, guys. Like every day, I guess, but this weekend even more so than normal with lots of out town guests. There we go. All right. I think we're good with the sound. Let me know if there's any issues. Let me check on my phone real quick and make sure I went live. Yep. All right. So we had an out-of-town guest here. Something just happened. We had an out-of-town guest here since Wednesday. And she was flying back today. So I had to pick her up Wednesday and then I had to drop her off at the airport. It's nice that we live by Chicago because so many flights can fly in and out very cheaply, but it's about 2 hours away. So it is quite the drive, especially if there's traffic. And if I get stuck in traffic, that's a good 2.5 hours. So, all right. But we were just talking on the way to the airport and I kind of had this thought of a topic suggestion. And I know I've talked about it before, but I thought it would be good to talk about kind of the whole concept of a fountain or a drain, right? Are you a fountain? Are you someone who breathes life into other people? Are you someone who is a joy to other people? Are you someone who's an encouragement to other people? Or are you a drain? Are you just constantly complaining about your life or your circumstances? You're putting all of your dirty laundry out there for everyone to read about. Do you drain other people when they're around you? See, I am an extrovert, but there are certain people that have come through my life and, at different times, maybe in the ministry or, just meeting new people where it's kind of draining to be around them. And sometimes it's not always bad. Like, obviously, if I'm putting myself out there and I'm helping someone who needs help, that can be draining, but that's not necessarily bad. That's ministry. Ministry can be draining. But there have been different situations in life where it was like I would see that person coming, and no matter how beautiful the day was, no matter how great their circumstances were, they would find something to complain to me about. And we've seen this often, it can be bitter old women that just hate their life and they're just complaining and upset and mad about everything. But are you known as a person who's thankful and content in life? Or are you someone who complains constantly and needs everyone to hear about every woe and trial that you have going on? So how we are often is how our children are. How can we ourselves exhibit a life of thankfulness, and how can we raise thankful, content children? So I kind of wanted to go over some of those tips for yourself and for raising kids. And it's a well-known fact that we live in an era where the unthankfulness era, right? And the Bible talks about it as we see the last days approaching. There's going to be unnatural affection, unthankfulness, like all these different attributes. We're obviously living in that time now. And so it's going to be harder than ever with just the world that we live in to raise truly thankful children who are content with their life. They're content with what God has given them. They're content with their home. They're content with their lot in life. It's going to be more and more difficult as we get towards the end of the world and as we start going into the last days. So for me, I know it all starts with you. You yourself, your kids are going to mimic or pick up on what you do. And if you've been saved out of a non-Christian home and you grew up in a non-Christian home, this is going to be a lot harder for you to break because different patterns and different ways of acting is what you have been, is what you've adapted, because kids do tend to mimic their parents. They do tend to pick up on things that their parents do. So definitely with yourself, focus on the things that you have rather than the things that you don't have. Okay. So this can be for single women too. If you don't have a husband, don't always be focused on that. Rather focus on the blessings in your life. Do you have a good family? Are you surrounded by friends? Do you have a good pastor? Do you have a good church that you go to? So on and so forth. Focus on those things rather than I don't have a husband. And then it just consumes like every waking day of your moment, of your life. Like, I don't have a husband. I need a husband. I don't have a husband. I need a husband. And that's all you're thinking about. And it's just there all the time. For any single girl that might be watching, I would definitely encourage you to take advantage of the time when you're single and do the things that you're not going to be able to once you're married. Okay. So that could be travel to a place that you've always wanted to travel to, whether that's London or whether that's, I don't know, Hawaii, or I'm just thinking of things like places I've been in the last couple of years, places I've always wanted to go. When I was younger, I could have never imagined in a million years that I would get to travel. I always thought as I always thought as a young child that that was for only the rich, or that was for the people that had lots and lots of money. Well, as I've gotten older, I've never been rich, and I've had to find ways to do what I want to do while on a meager salary. And so I've learned how to do that. And you can too. Um, there are lots of tips and tricks when it comes to traveling. You don't have to be a millionaire to travel. You don't even have to be making a lot of money. You can definitely make it happen. And I found that as Americans, as humans, we tend to make things happen that we want to happen. So take advantage of the time where you don't have a lot of responsibility. Be a blessing to your church. Volunteer at your church, help out with children's ministries. Be a mother's helper for a lady that's had babies where, that could be a huge help to her, but to you, it's just not really that big of a deal. You wouldn't believe what you could do as a single person for the Lord, for others. Don't just sit around moping about what you don't have, but instead focus on what you do have and then try to, make other people's lives better if you have the capability of doing that. So let your first thought, and this is one thing I've really been trying to implement in my own life, let your first thought be when you wake up and you open your eyes, let your first thought be one of thankfulness. And then your last thought when you go to bed, trying to hold back a sneeze. When you go to bed and you close your eyes and sleep, your last thought to be one of thankfulness. And I actually read that tip in a book, and it was talking about how thankfulness really does help every aspect of who we are as a person. It helps our health. It helps our mental state. It helps our hormones. It helps our feelings. Every part of us, just being thankful helps so much. And there are a lot of verses in the Bible about thankfulness. So I would encourage you to do a study on thankfulness. Look at all the words that have to do with thankfulness, giving thanks to the Lord, being content, but be content with such things as ye have, different things like that. Look up all those verses, and with your kids, have them all go through and maybe memorize a verse on thankfulness, maybe memorize a verse on contentment. And then, but yeah, that's really helped me from the time that I'm like awake and I'm walking to my bathroom. I'm thinking, thank you, Lord. I'm thanking him. Thank you, Lord, for allowing me to wake up. Thank you, Lord, for giving me a good night's sleep. Thank you, Lord, for running water. Thank you, Lord, that I can brush my teeth here without having to go outside. Just every little thing I'm doing in the morning, I'm sending thanks to the Lord. Hey, Ashley. So those things are a huge, just having a mind of thankfulness, I think will help. And then, teaching your kids to be that way too. But let's talk about focusing on being thankful and grateful instead of complaining about your home. So be grateful for what you have been given, whether that is an apartment, whether that's a duplex, whether that's a home that you're renting, whether that's a home that you bought. if you have to live with someone for a little bit, just whatever it is, you have a roof over your head. The Bible actually says there, with food and raiment, therewith be content. As Americans, we've kind of added food, raiment, and lodging, but it doesn't even say that. The verse doesn't even say that. It says with food and raiment, let us therewith be content. So all the extra perks that we have in America, we are truly blessed, and we are truly spoiled, especially compared to third world countries. So if you have a roof over your head, you have a dry place to sleep, you have clothes on your back, you have food to eat, you are blessed than so much more of a percentage of the world than you'll ever realize. So be grateful for what you have been given, whatever budget that your husband has. And that's another point. Live within your means. Our husbands want to please us. And oftentimes a wife can push her husband to do things that aren't going to be for the good of the family. And that could be going in over your head when it comes to a mortgage, because you're constantly nagging him about the home you live in. You want something bigger, you want something better, you want something in a different location. So definitely live within your means when it comes to this thing of having a home, because I'm shocked at how much some people will spend on a mortgage, that it's just half of their income is going to their mortgage. So the rule of thumb is you always want to be about 25% of your income is going to go towards lodging. So if I would, I've always recommended that families do budgets, but I would sit down and figure it, where are we with, how much of our income is going towards our mortgage, and just figure it out that way. And it's usually about 25% is a good rule of thumb. If you're way over that, you might want to look at kind of, scaling back a little bit, maybe buying something that you can afford, buying something that's maybe not as nice, but it's livable and it's sustainable for the income that you're bringing in. Focus on the good aspects of the house versus the negatives, and find cheap ways to fix it. You don't need granite countertops. You don't need the high-end paint. Whatever it is, find cheaper ways to do it. There's always a cheaper way to do it. And sometimes cheaper is not worse. Some people, they have to have the best of everything. They have to have the best appliance. They have to have, the granite countertops. They have to have I don't know what it is, Bosch mixer. I don't know what all of them are. But if it gets the job done, you don't need all the fancy bells and whistles, for sure. Learn to love where you are planted. And sometimes our husband's jobs are going to take us maybe places that we weren't necessarily thrilled with, but we need to learn to live contentedly wherever we're planted. And I've found through COVID, I shouldn't say that on here, I'm going to get banned, but I found during the years of that all states were pretty much the same. There weren't many states that did anything differently. And it all came down to the federal government having too much power anyways. And states' rights got taken away a long time ago. So as much as we think we have states' rights, we do in some areas, very small. But if the federal government decrees something, most states fall in line. So I found that almost all the states were pretty much the same. And if you do a comparison of housing, I know there are different states. I was actually just looking this up, because a house in Florida, if you took a house in Florida and you put it here, it would probably be, let's say, like a $300,000 house in Florida. You stuck it in rural Illinois, not the town, not city, not Chicago. And you take a $300,000 house in Florida and you stick it in Illinois, it's probably going to be about 100,000, maybe. Maybe less than that, maybe 60,000. I don't know. I just know there's a huge price difference between housing in rural country, Illinois, housing in Florida. So there are different pros and cons of living in each state. And I do know that based off of, what we bring in a year, we wouldn't be able to afford to live in Florida. So there are different states that possibly you can afford to live in, possibly you can't. But I found that pretty much if your husband thinks that you could swing it, you probably can. And I pretty much determined that no matter where I went in life, if I just had my husband and my family, I would be happy. So it could be Illinois, I'm probably going to be here because my family's here and that's what's important to me for the rest of my life. It could be Nebraska. It could be Colorado. It could be, I don't really like the hot states because they have roaches and bugs, and that's the one thing that I would really struggle with. But I could do it if I had to. I would just make friends with an exterminator so that he would give me a good deal. But yeah, I could make it work if I had to. But I've tried to in life, no matter what house we lived in, no matter where we lived, I've always tried to learn to just be content and be happy and make the best of what I had. Make the best of what I had. Not always want a bigger house, a better house, whatever. So states are pretty much the same, but what's important to you? And there's two things that are really, really important to me. My family, number one, and my church, obviously. So the people that we have here in Illinois, we're not going to have the same people in Iowa. We're not going to have the same people in Nebraska. We're not going to have the same people in New Hampshire. So that's really important to me. This is where everything is. And so I'm going to deal with our, crummy governor. Illinois needs good churches too. I'm going to deal with stupid gun laws that most of the sheriffs have said they're not going to abide by because they're unconstitutional. I'm going to put up with some stupidity because I know this is where God wants us. And I know that we're right in God's will. And I know there's people here that need us and want us. So to me, that means everything. So I'm going to try not to complain too much about our fat Pritzker governor and just deal with it. But I would encourage you. So if you are in a state like Illinois right now, hey, Chanello, Illinois right now is trying to pass some bill that would put a ton of homeschooling regulations in place, and we've never had it. So the one golden part of living in Illinois is we have the best homeschooling laws in the entire nation. You won't find any state with better homeschooling laws than Illinois. Even if people wanted to move to our church, but they can't stand Illinois' policies and they moved 30 minutes away to Iowa, Iowa actually has stricter homeschooling laws than Illinois does. So you always have to look at it both angles. Am I going to be homeschooling kids? How long am I going to be homeschooling? Maybe I will want to live in Illinois. So there's this major push to push this bill through, and we would have to be in contact with our local school district. So we would have to basically register our kids with the state that they're being homeschooled. We'd have to report how many days they did. We would have to show proof of work. I don't know if that could be like a lesson plan book with all their grades, because that's kind of how I've kept track through the years. I don't know what that would be, but it would just put a lot more regulations in place that are overreaching. The government, I've raised successfully almost 4 kids now through the homeschooling system. They have all excelled in life. They have all excelled at whatever job they put their hands to. And I don't need the government's help. I don't need the government's eye watching me. So all the homeschoolers here are in an uproar about it. We've been signing witness slips to try to oppose this bill, and way more opposition than proponents for it. And I don't even think some people quite understand, because there's some homeschoolers that are going in, marking their homeschoolers, and then saying that they're a proponent of the bill. That's not the one we're supposed to mark. We're supposed to mark that we are opponents to this bill. So I have a feeling it will get squashed. And so if you are in a state that is trying to pass through, definitely get involved. I would encourage you to be a member of the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, to know what your rights are in whatever state that you're living in, to be on top of that. But definitely get involved if it comes to filling out witness slips, showing up there to oppose it. There's a bunch of different things that you can do. So that being said, I put up with what I put up with in Illinois because this is where God wants me. And I could sit around, I could make posts every day complaining about Fat Pritzker and how he's running the state into the ground and how people are fleeing Illinois. But I don't want to live my life like that. I don't want to be constantly complaining. And like I said, there's pros and cons to every state that you live in. It doesn't matter how good your governor is. If the cost of living is through the roof and you can't afford it on $35,000, $65,000, $85,000, you're not going to be able to live there. So you have to take all those things into consideration. But how are we thankful for our marriage? So, number one, be invested and committed to whom you are married to. Don't compare your marriage with anyone else's. Don't worry about anyone else's marriage. Only worry about your marriage. This goes for being negative of someone else's husband, husbands being negative of someone else's wife. It's not your job to fix them or straighten them out. It's not your concern at all. It's always amazed me, preachers that will get up and preach against another man's wife. It's like, what are you doing? That's not your jurisdiction. You're not staying in your lane at all. So if someone's husband is okay with their wife being vocal about something, then that's on them, not you. And it's not your job to straighten them out. So um, tell your husband you appreciate him. Tell him you're thankful for the home he has provided for you. Tell him you're thankful that he's a hard worker. Tell him how thankful you are. He needs to hear that too. Just like we as parents liked to be thanked for the things we do for our children, just like God likes to be thanked for, the things he does for his children, men like to be thanked too. They like to know that their wives see them and appreciate them, just like we like our efforts appreciated and thanked for in the home. Men are the same way. Don't be a complainer about everything wrong in life the second he gets home. He's been bringing home the bacon, working hard, and then he walks in and it's just this happened and this happened and the washer broke and the toilet's leaking and the bill collectors are calling and you know Henry did this and hit his brother and bit his brother and Susie did this. Just let him chill a little bit. Don't be a complainer. Try to focus on the good things that happened. Um, you know, Kelly did really good in reading today. She's blending words now. We had a success with potty training. I made this wonderful sourdough bread for you. Try to focus on the good things before you just instantly get into the complaints about how your day went crazy and bad and blah, blah, blah. Tell him about a legitimate problem that could be going on, but then just let it be. You don't need to bring it up every hour on the hour. You don't need to bring it up every day at 4 o'clock. You don't need to bring it up every Wednesday. Just let it be. He needs to know about an issue. And then I figure, especially when it comes to something around the house, let's say we have a leak or something, I'm going to tell him, but then that's kind of on him if it doesn't get fixed. I know what my pay grade is. So I know if something's above my pay grade, I can't fix leaky plumbing. So if I tell him about it and then it doesn't get fixed, it's kind of on him. So he's going to have to kind of figure it out if our floor starts rotting out. So that's just kind of how I've approached different things. That works for me. It might not work for you. If he tells you to remind him, go ahead. But I found that most men don't really like being nagged constantly about things. They'll take care of it, but they need to do it on their own time. And then don't complain about him to others. I think this is huge. Our husbands need to be built up to other people, and they especially need to be built up to our children. So definitely don't complain about him to the kids. Build him up to your kids. Don't tear him down to them. So that's all tips with marriage. If you guys have any more tips on marriage, definitely leave them down below. This time that I'm doing it does not seem like it's a good time for women. I definitely want to keep the 3 p.m. time. That seems to be a lot better when, you're not like in the middle of supper preparation. You're not in the middle of supper preparation and all that. So excuse me while I cannot talk at all. But let's talk about your social media presence and how you come across to other people, because let's face it, social media presence is kind of a big deal nowadays, especially if you have a platform at all of any kind. And I've often said that social media just kind of reveals. I like social media because it kind of reveals who you are as a person. The comments that you leave everywhere, the things that you get involved in, the things that you share, the things that you write about, the things that you promote. It really shows where your heart is. It shows who you as a person are. It shows your character. It shows different even personality things. Now, I will say, just this week, I've met a couple of people who I knew only from online interactions, and people are always different in real life than online, right? For both of these instances, it's both people considering moving here. it's been good. Like they've been good interactions. They've been good interactions online, but they've been good interactions in real life too. Have you ever like thought you were going to click really well with someone online and you did click with them online, but then you meet them in real life and it's just like crickets chirping and no one's talking. You don't really click. You don't really get along with them. So there is definitely a difference between social media presence and then who you are as a person in real life. That being said, is your reputation online that of a complainer or an encourager? When people scroll past your posts, are they like, oh no, what's the new trauma today? What's the new complaint today? What's the new tragedy today? What's the new trial today? Or are you posting things that's an encouragement? You're talking about your blessings, you're talking about being thankful, you're talking about all these things going on in your life. And my goal has always been not to try to appear that I have a perfect life, but to appear to be thankful for the life that I have. And whether that's motherhood, which is hard and it's nitty gritty, I want to be real about the struggles of motherhood, but I also want people to know just how much I embrace motherhood and how much I love motherhood and how important that is to my own, that's my life. And so I try to be real and I try to be down to earth with what I post, but I also want to be an encouragement to the young moms out there. I want to be an encouragement to the young wives out there. I want to be an encouragement to those who are struggling. So I don't want to be a drain. There's a time and a place for me to do bold posts, maybe controversial posts, maybe posts that are just kind of talking about different struggles I'm going through. But I don't want that to be on my feed every single day when people are scrolling through and I'm just draining the joy out of them and draining the life out of them. That's not what I want my social media presence to be. So, do people hear your prayer request, but then they never hear the blessings? I've known people like this in church. Every week, the world's ending. Like they're going to lose their house the next day. Their car's going to be repossessed. Their dog ran away. Their grandma's dying. But then the next week, when their car hasn't been repossessed, their home hasn't been taken away, their dog was returned, their grandma is still kicking. When it comes down to all those things, you never hear about the blessings. So what happened? Did the bank come and get your house? Well, no. But I thought 6 months ago, you had said they were going to come get your house. So watch out for that. Try not to be the one that's always just giving all of these horrible, dire things are happening, but then you're not talking about the blessings as well, the blessings of your life. So you gotta watch for that. And then, do you pick fights with others online? Are you known as a troublemaker? Are you known as someone who's just going to come in and stir the pot a little bit and then leave? Or do you try to dissolve situations? If you see two friends fighting, do you get in the middle and you try to egg them on? Or do you try to be the peacemaker? How is your mouth online? Is your mouth full of cursings and railings and just talking bad about other people all the time, using foul language, using profanity? Or is your mouth full of blessings? Are you trying to be an encouragement to other people? Are you trying to call down blessings on people and not just trying to call down cursings? I'm shocked at how many Christians try to call down cursings and curses on other Christians. We shouldn't be like that. Are you known for following someone and then only popping in when you disagree? I've had Facebook friends like that. It's like, yay, we had this baby and she's beautiful and I'm so in love. Crickets. And then, you post something a little controversial, maybe about your Baptist beliefs or, something, and there they are just ready to disagree with you. So it's like they're following you just to disagree with you. And the ones I'm talking about. They just pop in to disagree, cause a fight, and then they leave. But anytime you have a nice, pleasant post, they're nowhere to be found. And just remember, when it comes to social media, there is a block feature. Definitely take advantage of this. I've had to quite a bit in the last 5 or 6 years since I've been on social media. I've definitely had to take advantage of it. I was just talking to someone this week about how you need to have established boundaries in your life when it comes to people. If you have people texting you, people coming on your Facebook, just leveling just lies and accusations and calling you names, you don't have to listen to that. So I'm trying to encourage different people in my life when it comes to if someone's texting you, calling you horrible names, you can tell them, listen, I will revisit this conversation when we're able to talk peaceably, but I'm not going to be in this conversation if you're going to continue to call me these horrible things. You don't have to subject yourself to that. And when it comes to social media, you can unfollow people. If someone is a constant complainer and you just feel like in your spirit they're bringing you down too, and you're already struggling. Maybe you've had a really rough week or you've had a really bad day, and then every time you see this person's post, they're just constantly complaining and their life's about to end and they have no blessings in their life and everything's a trial and everything's a tribulation, even though compared to third world countries, Americans have it pretty good. You can just unfollow. You don't have to follow them. You don't have to see their stuff. So that is the nice thing about social media. You can block, you can unfollow, you can delete, you allow what is in your life. You allow what you see. So take control of that. If something's bringing you down, you don't have to see it. But let's talk about raising thankful kids now quickly. So raising thankful kids, how do we raise thankful kids? Well, I know when it comes to picky eaters, I've often asked, what do you do if you have a picky eater? This is really hard for me because I am not a picky eater. There's one food and one food alone that I will not eat in this entire, I'll try everything except for maybe a little baby duck and an egg. Have you seen that in the Philippines where, I kind of draw the line there. But as far as like Americanized food, food in America that we would eat in America, food we would eat in Europe, food we would eat in Ireland, I hate raw onions. That is literally the only thing on this planet that I don't like is raw onions. I'll eat Brussels sprouts, love them. I'll eat peas. I'll eat lima beans. I'll eat sauerkraut. I will eat pickled cabbage. Everything pickled I love, actually. I have a very large palate when it comes to food. Onions is the only thing I hate. And it's crunchy onions. I can eat cooked onions. It's just the texture thing. I don't know. I hate them with a passion. Always have. Probably always will. That being said, my husband is a very picky eater. So I've kind of struggled with this, finding the balance in my own life because it seems hypocritical because I know exactly what his tastes are. So I know how to cook food to his liking. And I do because I tailor our food around him. He is the breadwinner. He's the one, paying for the groceries. I like to please him, especially when it comes to food. So I do tailor my meals around him. That's why oftentimes when he goes on a trip, that's when I'll make my lasagna. That's when I'll make my cheesy casseroles, all of that. So I blame his mom. I say this kind of jokingly. I blame his mom because she never forced him to eat this stuff growing up. But I will say maybe it's legitimate because his hatred for cheese is coming through in a few of my kids. So maybe it's genetic. I don't know, which I would still blame his parents for, I guess. But one thing for me that I've done is I was not going to play this game where I was having to make 3 different things for my kids. I'm not doing that. And you can't do that when you've got a bunch of kids. I have 8 kids. No way I could do that. So I would make the main meal. And if the child did not want to eat it, they had the option to make themselves a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That was it. Those were the options. I wasn't going to be making 5 different things for my kids. So because of that, most of my kids are not picky eaters. I would say the only one who's a little picky is Jace. And that's because he doesn't like, it's kind of the same type of thing as his dad. Like he will eat cheese. I'm trying to think. He's actually not super picky anymore. He used to be more so when he was younger, but he pretty much eats everything now as far as I can remember. There's not much he won't eat. Sour cream. Like him and my husband have this thing against sour cream, and I love sour cream. They hate sour cream. So as long as I don't make things with sour cream, they're usually pretty good. So I don't really have 2 terribly picky eaters. And I think it's just because I've always kind of done it that way. I make the meal. They either eat it or they can make themselves. I don't do it. I make themselves a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. There is that option. I don't want them to starve to death. They're really going to be dry heaving over it. But So I make one meal. I make sensible plain meals sometimes. Sometimes we'll just have eggs and toast. We'll have it for supper. Sometimes we will just have pancakes. Sometimes, it doesn't have to be extravagant and fancy. When we were paying off our debt, we did do one meal a week of rice and beans. Sometimes it's rice and beans. I do very cheap options sometimes. So, I teach them how to make healthy, cheap options. And honestly, sourdough toast and eggs is a great cheap meal. And it's healthy because eggs are always healthy. So, but how do we raise thankful kids when it comes to things? I have them raise money for what they want, and I teach them the value of a dollar. I'm not shy of saying, I can't afford that. We can't do that. It's too much money. My kids do know that things aren't free. Money doesn't grow on trees, all this stuff. Kelly was so sweet today. I was in the store. We were coming on the way back from, I had to get some things for this stupid cleanse I'm doing. Thanks, Ron. Almost made it a day now, and here's my lemonade. I brought it with just in case. That's my cleanse with the lemonade. I'm doing the master cleanse again, so we'll see. Next week I should have a slimmer face from going over a week with just doing the lemonade. But I was stopping there to get that, and I told the girls that if they had been good on the trip to Chicago, because I had to take the babies with, if they were good on the way back, we could get them a candy, and they were. So I was letting them pick it out. And I was like, no, we're not getting that. That's too expensive. That's $2.50. No, not getting it. I said, you need to get something that's $1 or something below $1. And Kelly was looking at all of them, and she can tell the difference now between numbers because she's doing school. And she's like, no. And she had one candy in her hand and she put it back and she said, Mom, I'm not getting this one. I'm going to get this other candy just to save you money. And I thought it was super cute and super sweet. And I told her, I'm like, that makes me so happy when you're concerned about spending money or, the money that mom spends. And if your kid shows thankfulness in an area, definitely encourage that. And I can tell it really perked her up. And they had been fighting and arguing because it's a super nice day today, 70 degrees today. They'd been fighting and arguing on the way to the airport about who was going to get the bike first when we got home. And I'm like, stop fighting. No one's going to get it if you continue to fight. Well, after she did the thing with the candy, and I told her that makes mommy really proud. When you do things like that, that shows that you're caring about other people and you were thankful and you were caring for mommy because you said you wanted to save mommy money. So we got in the van, and as soon as we got in the van and they got buckled, she said, Hannah, when we get home, you can have the bike first. And it was just super sweet because, you see kids really like soak in the instruction, and then you see them soak in those compliments. And then you see them, because it made them feel good, that they were caring for someone else. Then you see them go further and do it again. So it's little things like that that really encourage me. So yeah, teach them they don't need the latest fad or trend. Teach them that I know when I was growing up, it was like Air Jordans. Does anyone remember those? Those were like, people would spend so much money on those. Like $100 was a lot when I was growing up. And I remember the Air Jordans were huge. And I never even asked for one just because I knew we didn't have that type of money. Because my mom raised me knowing the value of $1 as well. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm not going to complain to my kids about, oh, we're so poor again. You guys are so expensive, but I do want them to realize that things aren't free. It's electricity is not free. Food is not free. Eating out is not free. And my kids rarely get to eat out. Sometimes we'll pick up a $5 meal deal, no judging, from McDonald's. And that's like the extent. So the nice thing is though, when we do get to go to Pizza Ranch or we take one of them out for their birthdays to Texas Roadhouse or something, it's a big deal. And they appreciate that and they're thankful for it. So if I was just giving them Texas Roadhouse every single week, it would get to the point where they wouldn't even care. So we try to kind of save the nicer places for birthdays, special events, different things like that. We do have a budget for birthdays and Christmas. We have a set amount that we will spend on their birthday presents and their Christmas presents, and they know this. And it's kind of cool because then they start planning their presents, with the budget in mind. So And then how do we teach them to be thankful for the work we do as a mom? Well, I know with my kids, I do expect their help. I'm not a one-man show. We all live here. We're all going to pitch in. We're all going to help. So I expect them to do chores. I expect that to pitch in whenever I tell them I need help. And I'm also raising my kids to be independent. I did that topic last week or the week before. I can't remember. I am raising them to be independent. And then express your thanks to people in front of them. Let them see you be thankful. Let them hear you talk about how you appreciate someone in the church who did something for you, or you appreciate a monetary gift, or you appreciate help that someone gave you. You appreciate someone helping you move, whatever it is. See them expressing your thankfulness to people. And then teach them to be frugal. And I am doing this with my girls. I'm teaching them how to shop secondhand. I'm teaching them how to do deals on traveling. I'm teaching them how to get deals on hotel rooms. I'm teaching them the best place to shop for groceries. I'm teaching them all the frugal tips and tricks, because chances are if they marry someone in the ministry, which I know Abby intends to most likely, then they're going to be on a very, very small budget. And they will have learned from the best when it comes to living off small budgets. And then teach them to do without until they can save up. Teach them that something that you have to work towards, it's a way better feeling and a way bigger reward than just instantaneous gratification. And we live in a world where instantaneous gratification is there. Barely anyone waits, for physical affection until marriage. It's people are losing their virginity at earlier and earlier times. People don't wait to save up for a house. People don't wait to save up for a car. People don't wait to even cook their food. They stick it in the microwave, and with a push of a button, you've got hot food. We just live in a society where everything's instant. If we have to sit and wait for a video to buffer more than 10 seconds, we turn it off and go to another video. That's how impatient we are. So when they have to work towards buying an item, they appreciate it a lot more. And I've seen that even in my own kids' lives. When they started detasseling, we made them save up. Or no, it was when they did the jobs with my husband, we made them save up for a Nintendo DS that they wanted. And Jason and Tommy split it. And they still talk about how that was the best purchase of their life. And it was so exciting when they went and they spent all of their hard-earned money to buy that Nintendo DS. And then they'll tell you about other times where they had saved money and they made a stupid purchase, and just how they're still mad at themselves because that was a lot of work that went into buying whatever it was, and then it broke, or it was a dumb purchase or whatever. It wasn't worth it. So they learn the value of a dollar. Teach them that no one in life is superior to anyone else, and we're all people at the end of the day. Teach them to have compassion on others, not to overlook the needs of others. And you're saying, what does that have to do with thankfulness? Well, part of teaching your kids to really keep an eagle's eye on other people and what they're going through, it teaches them to be thankful for their own life. I've had my children often tell me, Mom, the older that we get and the more that we hear about different stories of things that went on in other people's homes, the more thankful we are that you and Dad were our parents or are our parents. And I echo that. The more stories I hear of abusive situations, the more thankful I am for my family and the home that I grew up in, because not every home is perfect. And my home wasn't perfect. My home isn't perfect now. And where I'm raising my kids. But it is a home that I wanted, and I'm trying to give that to my children. And it is a home that I'm thankful for. All the positive things that I experienced as a kid, I've tried to pass that on to my own children. And the more and more stories I hear from others about different situations that they're in, different situations that they grew up in, it makes me thankful for my situation, even though I lost my dad in an early age. And, even though things were stress-filled and tense for a while, I had a lot of blessings too growing up. So teach them to help those who have things tougher than we do. When we have our children help out with different ministry opportunities, they see what others are going through, and that makes them thankful. It makes them thankful for the parents they have. It makes them thankful for the church that they have. It makes them thankful for the home that we live in. It makes them thankful that we have food on our table. It makes them thankful that they have clothes. When they see others that are going without, it makes them more thankful. So throughout life, if you teach your children to focus on the needs of others versus what they have or what they don't have, that's going to create and cultivate an attitude of thankfulness. And it's the same for you. If you are just focused on how bad your back hurts that day, or how this muscle aches, or this hurts, or that hurts, that's going to consume your thoughts, and that's going to be all that you can think about. But if you visit someone in the hospital that only has a few days left to live, and you see the pain and agony that they're in, that's going to suddenly make yours seem like nothing, right? So if you are constantly focused on how little money you have, but you're completely overlooking the family in your church that can't even afford to put groceries on their table while you can, you're missing so much when you focus only on your needs. So I would encourage all of you to focus on the needs of others this week. Try to be a blessing to someone. Try to make up your mind, and this is my new philosophy, and I'm going to live this way for the rest of my life, that I'm determined that whatever I'm going to do, I'm going to have fun doing it. I'm going to make it fun, and I'm going to enjoy it. And try to keep that philosophy for anything in life, whether that's raising kids, being a good wife, going to an outing you don't really feel like going to, whatever it is, just try to have that mindset that I'm going to be thankful for this day. I'm going to be thankful for what God has given me. I'm going to be thankful even for the trials that come in my life, because that draws me closer to the Lord. Trials in families sometimes draw husband and wives closer. Sometimes they draw children and parents closer. Trials in the church sometimes draw ministry families closer. And always just keep that attitude of thankfulness. And you especially, because kids exhibit what they see. So if we have a heart of thankfulness and we have an attitude of thankfulness, that will definitely pass on to our children. So I hope this was a blessing. Go be a blessing to someone this week. Be a blessing to your husband. Be a blessing to your kids. Be a blessing to your church. Be a blessing to your friends. And